This is Van Electric Ghost, and we're live on the air with Julie Heaton. You're an author, mentor, and we're going to talk about the power of positive thinking and manifestation. I want to welcome you to the Family Electric Ghost podcast. How you doing tonight?
I'm doing great. Thanks for asking.
Now, we always ask a guest before we get to the heart of your story a couple questions. What motivates you, and why do you do what you do?
You know, what motivates me is this is the way I can serve others. I do it because I've been there. I've been in a place where I could have used someone to help me through and get to the other side. And it motivates me to help people.
I think that's why I've always kind of liked about talking to mentors and coaches and producers and recording engineers, and it's like because they're all kind of teachers.
Yeah.
Everybody's like, they're taking like, oh, I'm going to pass it on. I'm going to take what I've learned and give it to another for the benefit of my experience. And I think that's a cool thing to do instead of saying, hey, I got to go get yours without helping anybody. But some people like to operate that way, and that's the way they are. But I think it's so much more uplifting if you want to help, like not just yourself but other people.
Yeah, I'll tell you, I think the world would be a much better place if we all opened our hearts and helped one another. So I'm stepping in line to do it.
Yeah, I think it's so important because we kind of live in this age of like toxicity. We see, get media overload. I'm always worried, talking to my daughter, that like, don't get, riled by the TikTok.
Yeah.
Don't try to conform to somebody's like body image,
Yeah.
like because they were pushing all these things, and you got to kind of watch what's going on because the kids are on these devices, they're on and then they're getting all this feedback, and it's not very positive in some cases. Like it can be very conforming and constraining and not open-minded and not expansive. It seems like you got to be on the watch for what's going on with the young people's minds, but even like
Oh,
older people too.
I was gonna say for yeah, young people, but for me too. It's you got to protect yourself. It's social media is just insidious. It sneaks up on you. And I just wrote a whole chapter about this in my book because before you know it, you didn't even know you had a problem. And
Mm,
then all of a sudden you're like, oh gosh, do I have gross feet? You're start to
yeah,
like,
yeah.
it's because of my age and I guess my algorithm, I'm getting targeted for all these things. And before I knew it, I was like, hey, maybe I should buy that. That does look
Yeah,
interesting.
the marketing.
Yeah, all the
You make somebody
marketing.
else a millionaire.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
You gotta be it's like what and I'm always like, I like to read a lot of I was a liberal arts major, I went to Bowdoin College. I like read philosophy and read like Victorian poetry, and I'm a musician, so I like art. I like people who do something that maybe they're not gonna have a profit.
right.
They want to make a statement, and it's because they just feel like making a vision statement
Hmm.
of what they're doing, and it doesn't necessarily, people have different metrics. It's like, oh, you want to you manifest success, but we have such a mindset of the metric is money, right?
Right.
The metric is power. But what if the metric was like, William Blake was a great Victorian poet that wasn't known in his time. He did his poetry on metal like plates in acid, and they were found in a barn.
Wow.
He had this idea that these things, the poetry he was doing was very important, but he didn't know how to market it, and it got found after his passing.
Right.
So, in the next era, when he wasn't here, he's one of the pillars of the Victorian era. So I think sometimes that shows you can manifest in different ways.
I, I tell people, we manifest everything. Where we are right now in our life, we've manifested it. And so the trick is to intentionally manifest what you want. And to know what you want, you have to love and accept yourself. And then you can figure out what's really true for you. What do you really want out of life? And it's usually not what you think it is. It's usually inner peace or serving others or, something. It doesn't mean you don't want to have a nice car or go on vacation or whatever, but manifesting really, we manifest with every thought, feeling, and action. We're just doing it all the time. So what I tell people is you might as well do it intentionally.
Mm-hmm. But
And
in the creative mindset, like I deal with a lot of people who are artists, and there's this kind of permission structure as an artist. Like the permission structure when you're a musician to go from being somebody that plays other people's music to
oh,
when you actually give yourself the permission to write your own.
right.
And that's a big leap because some people never get out of it. Some people remain studio musicians or classical musicians. There's nothing wrong being in that space, but they don't write their own stuff, right?
Right.
So there's this different kind of thing when like you give yourself the permission to work on your own idea.
Mm-hmm.
And then
Yeah.
that if that brings you joy, that's cool. If the other thing brings you joy, it's like however, like you manifest as you're a master musician and you get called to play on other people's work, but you never wrote it. You
Right.
just you're just a collaborator. And that might be the place you want to be
Right.
because
Yeah.
that
That
makes you
might
happy.
that might be the level you want to be at, and that's great. I mean, everybody's different. That's what
So
makes this world so cool is we're all so unique, and trying to be one another doesn't work out. If we all stay in our lane with our unique talents and abilities, there's plenty of room for all of us.
yeah, because the strategies for like an exercise is to as a musician, one of our strategies that we continually, I'm 57, I've been playing since I was like 12.
Wow.
I continually practice. Just because it's something just to keep up my skill set, there's a certain level of playing
Yeah.
piano you gotta keep on doing it or you lose it.
Hmm.
Um, and I think it's like people forget, athletes do that, musicians do that, but in order to do mindset, like where you have to kind of have a plan, right? You have to have a practice. And if you don't practice and you don't have a plan, you don't have a way to like reprogram or program what you're doing, like how are you really gonna manage if you don't have something that's like sustainable?
100%. Changing your thought patterns and your thought processes is like anything else. You absolutely have to have a plan, and it's a muscle. You have to keep reminding yourself, oh, okay, I'm not going to say bad things about myself anymore. Oh gosh, I just did it. Okay, it's a muscle memory. And I mean, I had to do it myself. I was very critical of myself, spent a lot of time talking about the things that weren't going right. And I had to learn, hey, I would say to myself, don't talk to your best friend like that.
Yeah, get out of the bad self-talk loop.
Yeah, get out of the bad self-talk loop. And I did. I would actually just say stop in my head, and I would replace it with something positive. I did that for a long time until that wire changed in my brain, until I just don't have negative thoughts like that anymore. Not to
Do you
say I
think
never
yeah.
say something, but I really don't. I mean, I very rarely would I think or say something bad about myself. I mean, I
Well, I
just
think people run into this like in education, you have people like say, well, I'm not good at math or I'm not good at English.
right.
They immediately once you like I'm a Buddhist, once you put that in the world
Yeah.
and you speak that out, then it's gonna end up being kind of a self-fulfilling thing. Like it's the law of attraction. You bring that energy to yourself.
Right.
So
Yeah.
if you could change and say like, I can be good at math, I will be good at math. I said, well, I'll never be good at math. I like not my wheelhouse. Well, it won't. It will remain out of your wheelhouse.
That's true. And to be fair, there's things that we want to focus our energies on, things we don't, right? So like for me, creative writing and um, anything where I can use my hands, I love
Mhm.
anything that's anything with numbers. I just don't love. So
Yeah.
yes, I could take the time and learn to be better at math, but I don't chastise myself for that's not being in my wheelhouse. It's just not part of my gig.
But I think it's like that looking glass self, like right? Realization of who you are. Like an
Right.
artist, like I'm not a mathematician, I'm not a physicist, right?
Right.
I'm not going to do that. But actually, in my day job, I am a software developer, so I'm kind of left right brain.
That's
So
pretty good.
I'm able to do both,
Right.
and that's cool. But that's cool for me. But that doesn't mean like a lot of the creative people I know that they don't like math. They don't like this.
Right.
They're not into that. And but then again, music is math in some ways.
Yeah.
And so they put themselves down. And I always tell them it's like you're like when we're doing what we're doing, there's actually a lot of math in it,
Yeah.
and you just this is a type of math that you don't see it as math, but it is. But like so you kind of you don't have to say you love algebra or trigonometry or whatever, but you kind of in there and you just don't realize it.
Yeah. Is this coming out a different way?
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know?
So this, yeah, so a lot of that concepts are kind of so narrow. People want to stay in lanes, but I've always been this idea. There's a lot of things that merge. There's a
Yeah.
lot of cross pollination
Like
of things.
you.
Yeah, I just think there is a lot that people like take for granted. There's like all this stuff in your subconscious mind that's actually directing what you're doing,
Yeah.
and 5% is like your subconscious mind, and 95% is like subconscious. And artists, we give ourselves the permission to kind of pull into that, to
Yeah.
pull from it. So we a lot of times we call it the muse, and it seems like it's all coming from the outside, but a
Right.
lot of it is coming from the inside.
Yeah.
And as you get older, you start to realize, like, yeah, there's a lot of this stuff coming from the universe, but there's a lot of stuff coming from my inner universe too.
Well, we are the universe,
Yeah,
you know? We're connected.
yeah.
We don't have to look outside ourselves for anything.
Maybe you could speak to that because I think some people maybe don't have that idea of like we are the universe, that we are connected in that way, and they're looking
Yeah.
externally and not realizing the connection that you're talking about.
Well, I believe that we're all connected to everything, and we are the universe or God. So we don't have to seek outside validation or outside for God or the universe. We can certainly quiet our mind and feel into ourselves and meditate, you know,
Yeah,
and that brings for me the peaceful feelings of what I imagine God would want me to feel. But no, God is not outside of us. It,
yeah. Well, we are like that in the universe. We're part. They are and of the
we
whole.
are of the universe. Yeah.
Yeah,
When these bodies go away, we just go
get
back
back into
into
it. It's just like a
back into it. We're just
recycling program.
it's a recycling program. We're stars, you know.
Yeah, well, the energy, like anybody that deals with energy is like it doesn't get destroyed. It's like
No.
and
Yeah.
so your electrical force it gets back out into the world, and the electrical energy is still there.
That's
Um,
right.
and in Buddhism, we like if I don't make it in this life, I'll probably get to the next life or the life after that. It's not over.
Right.
So this idea is already kind of it's like kind of in our heads, already. It's like, hey, not that I'm not going to try in this life, but to know that I still have opportunities that go beyond even where I am now. And so this idea that gives you, like it to me, it gives you this like hope that you can always evolve, that you're always going to get somewhere.
I tell people, you know, for me, my truth today, integrity and truth are different. So, when I say something to you on this show, it's true for me. It's my truth. But that truth is going to evolve. Things are going to happen over the next years. And if we did a podcast a year from now, I might have a
Yeah,
new
different way.
truth. Yeah.
Yeah,
And that's evolution. And hopefully that doesn't stop for you, until you die or become
the next thing.
become Buddha, you
The end of
become
Yeah, well, you kind of just you get we are start stuff. You be in the universe. You could be on this plane. You could be on another plane. You could be somewhere anywhere.
yeah,
But the idea sometimes is like people like they give themselves a ceiling. They give themselves this thing, and it's like, well, it's not possible. They can't get out. They're in like bad loop. And what I found in creativity and music is this idea: there's no bad note. There's an opportunity. There's like
Yeah.
the happy accident is always possible, right? So the idea, the perfection trap, is sometimes in our art form because of the computers today. We can go back into a piece of music and we can go crazy editing it to try to make it something that we think is perfect.
Right.
In the old days, you couldn't get to that granular level of certainty. It would be on tape, or like, oh, it is what it is.
Yeah.
And I try to tell a lot of artists is like sometimes it's those earlier takes, and maybe it's not the best guitar or the best mic, but it's the intention of what you did in that moment. That if we listen to all these other things you just did, you did 99 versions of it. The first three are better than 90,
Yeah.
the
They
97.
have more heart. Yeah. Yeah. They
And
have
and
more
and
heart.
sometimes people aren't willing to accept that because they think it's like, oh, if I keep on at it, that version 101's got to be better. And it's like, not necessarily.
No, this perfectionism, this overproduced life that a lot of us lead, it really is kind of soul crushing, right? I mean, we just talked a little bit about social media, but let's just say the PTA, whatever mask we're wearing in public to show this side of us that's perfection, when inside, certainly none of us are perfect, and we all have things going on, and life is hard sometimes. And what if we all could shed that mask and open up? Wouldn't it be such a better world? Wouldn't people feel less alone?
I think if you could give yourself a little grace, like, 'cause
Yeah.
like if people who don't give themselves enough grace, and then sometimes they project that on other people, and then it becomes like you're very prickly, and you're not like in the law of attraction. Like, are prickly gonna people gonna attract like what they want? Probably
Yes,
not. If
exactly.
you're more
Yeah.
harmonious, if you have a more harmonious tone, if you're in like radiating an energy that allows people to say, "Hey, I can actually collaborate with you. I can talk to you. I don't feel like you're putting me down. I feel uplifted. I feel like there's something can happen." Versus somebody who's like, "Oh, I'm apprehensive. I'm uncomfortable." You can radiate like energy, and if you radiate that energy because you're not happy,
Yeah.
that you're unfulfilled, that you're upset, then it kind of triggers like a cascade effect all around you.
That's right. Energy draws energy. So if you're vibrating high, you're going to draw people in that are vibrating high with you. If you're vibrating low, you're going to create this whole universe of low vibrations around you. And that's, you know,
Kind of
you walk
self-fulfilling
in a room
prophecy.
and there's a guy who's like the lucky guy, everybody likes him. He's the lucky guy. That guy is vibrating a really high vibration. Everybody wants to be part of that. And that your
Mhm.
vibration goes up and you're around them. Same thing if you walk into a conference room and there's the doom and gloom guy that nobody wants to sit next to. It's because they're vibrating so low and they're energy vampires. You feel like your energy, your energy is getting
You don't
sucked.
feel good after that experience. You're like, I'm drained.
Yeah, I'm a little drained if you don't protect your energy. So, yeah, absolutely. I mean, the energy you bring into the world is your responsibility, and it's a big one because
Mhm.
you can change the way people feel in their day for
That's
sure.
that's why I think some people get caught in that bad loop, and they think like to me, I'm a cancer survivor, and once I survived the cancer, I realized it's like, hey, well, if I can survive that, I can do anything I want.
Right.
So it opened up a lot of possibilities for me at age 27. Now I'm 57, and there was like things I would do pre-cancer, post-cancer. Like I wouldn't be talking here pre-cancer. I wouldn't. I traveled to Japan post-cancer. I did things that I thought were impossible, but I got my limitations, like they were kind of pushed away, and I was like, hey, I can do things because I just saw that there was more possibility in this. Every day that you're here, there's something you could do, even if I don't hit it.
Right.
There's always something you can do, and it always been like very when I see people that create that wall or create the ceiling and they don't think that the next day that you can't fix it. They say the next day is gonna be the same as the day today, like, today or previous day. I'm like, you got to get out of that loop.
You can only manifest what you believe.
Hmm.
So, people that I see it all the time, people that are wanting to, we can use money because it's easy, manifest $1 million, but they believe that they can't pay their rent this month. They're not going to be able to manifest $1 million. They need to take a look at the root of their story around money. It's the same thing with any other story. Relationships, same thing. If you want to find this perfect person for you, you have to match that vibration inside of you.
Hmm.
You're not going to draw Prince Charming unless you can match that vibration.
Yeah, because you kind of got some people have a problem when people say, "Well, you gotta love yourself," and then they say, "Well, that's hokey," or
Well,
they can't believe it, right? Because they think it's like,
yeah.
"Well, I shouldn't." That'll make me have a big head. Well, I'll think I'm like all
Yeah,
that, and it's like, well, if you don't think you're
all
worthy,
that. Yeah.
right? Then how is anybody else gonna think you're worthy?
It's the foundation to everything. You loving and validating and having compassion for yourself allows you to do it for everybody else. If you don't love yourself, you can only give what you have.
Mhm.
You can only give what you have. So if you have compassion for yourself, you'll have compassion for others. If you love yourself, you're able to really love others, not on a exchange basis, not
Mhm.
I'll give
Not
you
looking for something.
this,
Yeah,
so you give me that,
yeah.
but just true love. Like, I just love you because I love you,
It's
you
not a
know?
marketplace where you gotta win that deal. So
Right.
I think people have kind of gotten to this like deal making, profit margin, kind of capitalist point of view, or there's and not that a capitalist thing is bad, but when you put everything into like winners or losers,
Right.
then it's like, well, then you have to gain on everybody. So somebody else is not. But what if you had a situation where everybody's gaining, right, in
Yeah.
some way,
Yeah.
and you don't feel like you're a loser because somebody else happened to maybe get an outcome that on its face looks like better than your outcome.
Right.
Right, and so
Yeah.
then you get resentful, and it's like, is that where your head should be? Or is everything, like, does it have to be transactional? Like,
And does it have to be competitive?
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, comparison kills joy.
Mhm,
If we could just focus on ourselves and our inner peace and living our lives the best way we know how, it brings a much more joyful life. It's when we start comparing, oh, she just got a new car and I, whatever, or 10 clients or whatever it is you're comparing. It's you're 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 putting your joy outside of yourself.
mhm.
You're it's not sustainable. What I like to tell people, everything we are is inside ourselves. We have everything we need inside ourselves already. We're not broken. We're all whole. And it's kind of rediscovering that being inside you that knows that.
And if you people can, they do, like, affirmations and manifestation, visualizations, you know, like, they then you can start to make things real for yourself,
Right.
and, as a musician, we take what's in our head and then we put it into the keys or onto through the guitar or through the saxophone, through our instrument. And
Right.
actors will take that feeling and will read the script, and then they say, "Well, I'm going to make this character come alive and with my vision of who this character is." And then doing the act of doing it, they do it. And the painter, every artist does that, but a lot of times people don't realize that you've got to actually. There's a lot of work in that. There's a lot of repetition.
Yeah.
There's a lot of steps. It's like I said, I could have 100 demos,
Yeah.
and I'll go and do 100, and then I realize number 3 is the best one, and then I go take that one. But it was like every step of the way, that 101 actually showed me that 3 was the best.
Right.
So sometimes, like, you have to go through it to get to it.
we are the narrator of our own story. And I think people need to remember that when we let other people narrate who we are and what we want, it creates unhappiness. We are the narrators of our own story. But to your point, manifesting the life we want takes action. There's the doing part. You can say, hey, I want to be a best-selling author. I could say that. But first I have to write the book. Then I've got to do the marketing. Then I got to get it out there. There's all these things that come with it. It's not just, praying it's going to happen and it happens. No, you do have the thoughts and feelings and you put them out there. You have to know, you have to believe it. You have to feel it. And whatever tools that is for people, for me, it is vision boards and affirmations. And that's how I get into the feeling of it. So whatever works for people is what they should do. But you have to believe it. You have to feel it. And then you have to do the work.
Yeah. A lot of times people say, like I got to put it in a voice memo or I got to write it on the chalkboard or write it on a napkin. What I found is like when I was going to college, I had to, like when I took notes, I would be writing in the book. I own the book. Like I would write in the book. I write in my notebooks. That like just orally doing it without writing it down, I wouldn't retain it. And I found like to make it happen, I had to physically put it on paper.
Right.
For me to be able to pass that test, I had to actually go through it. And people said, "Why are you writing all this stuff?" I said, "Well, because I'm not just gonna." I wasn't about the memorization, without writing it down. And I found that like physically doing that, it made it happen for me. And I've heard from some people that say, that actually writing it down in a journal or putting it into a memo, is that really something that you think works?
Oh, yeah. We're all different learners. I do think journaling works. I do it myself, even though sometimes I don't want to. Sometimes I'm like, I don't want to journal. But writing down in the mornings after I meditate, I do, it's a form of journaling, but it's called free form writing. And it's just writing anything that comes, it's anything that comes up. You don't edit it. You don't think about it. You just write whatever comes up. And for me, that's very powerful. Things come up I didn't even know were in my subconscious,
Yeah, it's like a flow state thing.
It's
like
a flow state thing.
Yeah,
so that's how I journal. But other people like to journal about their day and kind of close out their day and let it be in the past, like, so really just, I think you have to figure out what works for you. And that's what I say in my books. Like, not everything I do is going to resonate with you. Take what you want. Like, if this resonates with you, use it. If it doesn't, do something else. Because we're all so different.
Well, one size doesn't fit all. And that's why sometimes you see stuff on the net and say, oh, the 10 steps, they're going to do this. Well, maybe those 10 steps work for this group of people, but maybe it's like step 6 works on for this person, or steps that aren't even listed would work for this other person. So it's kind of like one size, there could be an idea. You could put the idea out.
Right.
But to step it out and be so kind of narrow in the focus and saying it's only this. I've always been kind of suspicious of people say, well, it's only these things. Like, really?
I agree.
Only be that.
How could it only be that? I think we all have different journeys, different perceptions about everything. No two people ever see the same thing the same way. And we have different ways of learning. So yeah, I mean, for someone to be, I really try not to be prescriptive.
Yeah, I think that we've run into a society today which things are very prescriptive.
Yeah, I agree.
They're very stepped out, and because our attention spans, people don't like reading 200,000 word books. They got to read 60,000 page book, word books, and postings can be 15 seconds, 30 seconds. If I'm a child of the 70s, I love the old films in the 60s and 70s. My daughter looked at it and said, that pacing's terrible. I can't get through this. And it's like there's no the patience level we have today is like very low.
Yeah,
and
it's
the
very
tolerance low. for like, we got to immediately know what it's about. You have to have like you're supposed to create intros for all podcasts.
Yeah.
Tell people the short of it, what it's about. Rather than let somebody actually go through and find out what it's about, you got to give them the cliff note. And I've
No.
been kind of resistant. I mean, I've been dabbling into it,
Yeah.
but I'm like, okay, it's like I don't really want to spend a lot of time doing that
Yeah.
because, like, I think the episode speaks for itself. If you don't have the patience to get through it, then that's not for you.
Yeah, then the episode's not for you. It is hard, it is the Manifestor's Playbook, the first book I wrote. I did write it in with that in mind. I wrote it in bullet points more than big paragraphs. And I told people in the book, if there's any one subject that interests you, Google it. I'm just bringing things to you that might help you in your life. And if you want to take a deeper dive, then Google it,
Yeah.
It's because I know that about people, and I want to give people tools they can use in their daily life. And so I wanted to make them accessible.
Yeah.
So,
Things like, card-based stuff. I see
yeah,
people
people love that.
I could go and like, I could look at chapter 6. I could go look at chapter 9. I don't have to go in order. People like
Right.
to I can just find the thing there, look at the index and say, oh, this applies to what I want to do. And then look at that and pull out what I want. Because that seems to be where people are at today. Like they don't want to go through the whole thing. They want to go find that one section that they think speaks to them, and maybe they won't read the rest.
Right.
And I was like, and I being somebody that, back, I went to a liberal arts school where we had to read a lot. And it was kind of like, boy, reading is like more of that Socratic method that is important to your knowledge to try to understand something. So you actually should go into depth, but I guess that's not where we are today.
Yeah, no, it's all changed. Reading comprehension isn't a thing really anymore.
Sad for me, but at least in my tech world, it's like the words mean a lot. Like in terms of when we're doing technical documents, and we have to be very intentional, and it's kind of that left right brain that sometimes we have to get really detailed in a world that sometimes people don't want to go down that road, but I still have to. That rigor is kind of required.
Yeah.
So it's kind of weird to be in this world at this time when I still have that hand in the old world.
Everything's changing really fast too, really rapidly with, as we know, AI and all the things that's bringing. It's information's just so quick, you just so quick.
Yeah, I just worry like whether people are missing some of the points.
Well, I will say, I mean, we talked about this a little bit, loving yourself and how it can feel corny and wrong. And that's, you're not going to get that in a quick hit. You're not going to learn to love yourself in a quick hit. That takes work.
That's where kind of like the sustainability. Because the problem, I think everybody's looking for such a quick fix, immediate gratification, that anything is sustainable actually might take a little effort, might be a little uncomfortable, right? Might be something that is going to tax you a little bit.
Yeah.
Like every athlete knows, like to get to your full level of fitness, there's a point where like it's not exactly comfortable to get there.
Right? Yes, it's painful. There's there's pain involved, and
I worry with this AI age is like people don't like remove the rigor of critical thinking, right? Then where are we going to be when we need a critical thinker? Are we going to say that only the AI machine is going to make the decision, or should like human beings have the rigor to actually make that level effort?
It's going to be an interesting ride. That's all I know. I want people to realize AI. I'm not resisting AI. I think it has its place, and it's here. There's
well, I use it. I have like respect for it, and I have some criticality about it.
Yeah,
because I mean, I'm a tech I'm in the world of tech. I'm certified on it.
Yeah,
the problem I have with it, there are some people that are relying on it too much.
Right.
And it provides hallucinations. There are ethical concerns. There are moral concerns. There's legal concerns.
Yeah.
And when you have something that you can, I mean, there are people that have used it. There are lawyers that have brought it to court and actually not done their clients a good service because they gave them wrong information.
Wow.
There are scientists that have done papers and used it and actually got the wrong theorems.
That's
So
crazy.
the problem with the AI is it will give you an answer that's very convincing. It's called
Yes.
hallucination. It can
Yeah.
actually go and look at something. And if it was trained, a good example, this I went too heavy, but if you train something up to 1985 and it only has things up to 1985 and you ask it about something in 1999, it will give you an answer based on 1985 data. If you don't check,
Right.
it will give you an answer that's incorrect. Humanity could be at a lot of risk in that kind of scenario.
Yeah.
If you start putting too much like trust in that too much could lead to a lot of bad outcomes.
Well, that's it. Kind of goes back to uh, our humanity. It's all inside of us. We have everything we need. AI can be a tool in our life, but we don't need it to
Mhm.
manage or run our life. You know, it's the same thing as seeking validation or seeking answers for somebody outside of you, your dad or your brother or whoever your person is. You already know inside of you, you already know, and you already have all the answers. So it's the same thing. You can use people as a tool, a sounding board, you
Yeah.
know,
You don't
like
wanna use them as a crutch.
you don't want to use them as a crutch or as your answer. You know, maybe you think, um, oh, I'm gonna be a math genius and this is how I'm going to do it. And you go to your brother and he says, no, you should do this instead. You might, okay, you might consider it, but if you know in your body already what you want to do,
Yeah. You know, in your heart and your soul, it's like
yeah,
that spirit thing that the machine's never gonna have that, right? Like,
right,
it's like if you're an actor and you're like Shakespearean level actor could do like live plays, very, emotive, you know how to use your hands, your eyes, your whole body as an actor.
right,
No matter what the AI creates in the world, you're like, it's never gonna match what you can do, right?
right.
As that actor, and you have to believe that, and I believe that humans will always know that, but sometimes they'll start to second guess themselves when the tech gets very convincing.
Yeah.
And I think we just have to have that resolute belief in like humanity is always still gonna be the secret sauce. You know?
Humanity is always going to be the secret sauce, and individuals, you still have autonomy, you still have the power. You know, your voice is yours, you know,
Yeah,
that's important.
I think a lot of kids today, I've run into some young people and they're like, well, why should I take the effort when I can just go get it from the AI? It's like, because you need to have that rigor, just like the athlete. Why are they doing the 5 miles? Why are
Yeah,
they doing all the pull ups? Why are they doing all that training? Yeah, I guess I could make a robot that could play your game, right? I could build a cyborg that could be a quarterback. Does
right.
that mean you don't want to be a quarterback?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that goes with that that just goes with personal power and writing your own story, being your own narrator. Like what do you want for your life and how do you want to live it? And what can you use as tools? But then you don't need to give away your power to outside forces, you know,
Mhm.
and including AI. You still need to build your life and sharpen your tools yourself.
And gratitude in relation to manifestation. How do you define what that means as a concept? Because some people might not really, fully understand the role of gratitude plays in manifestation.
Yeah, gratitude is like number one, right behind meditating and loving yourself. It's if being grateful for everything you have in your life raises your vibration. So I'll tell
Mm.
you a quick story. When I was years ago, I'd gone to a Chopra event and I was in a real dark place. I didn't like what was going on in my life. I wanted this and that to change. I was just not in a good place. And um, Deepak came in the room and said, "What are you all grateful for today?" And I was like, you know, and he said, "I'm going to give you a hint. It's everything. Should be everything." And that was like for
Like a
me.
big game changer. Like,
Yeah, it
and
was a
sometimes you get this epiphany that becomes like in engineering, it's like keep it simple, you know,
yeah,
because
yeah,
sometimes we get so caught up with the very complex solution. And it was,
yeah,
oh, it's so elegant, it's so this. And then somebody say, you know, well, you could actually just do this in like 3 steps, and you had 101. You only need to do like three, and that's more redundant. I mean, it's safer, less prone to errors, but you might think it's like that's not the solution because it's too simple.
yeah.
But
That's
that's how life is sometimes. Is sometimes this clarity comes through, and it doesn't have to be overly complex.
no, and that's what gratitude is to manifestation. So if when you wake up in the morning and you already feel lack because you didn't get enough sleep, or you have to go to this meeting you don't want to go to, or whatever, it starts your day on this tone, on this trajectory. The best thing we can do in the morning is wake up and say thank you, and then list out the reasons, even if they're just quick, like, "Oh, I'm so glad I woke up this morning. Oh, I have coffee brewing. That makes me happy." Just
Yeah,
change
you know,
that, change the input and output in the morning. It will change your day. And then during the day, I tell people that aren't used to being grateful, that are a little more on the negative side, set alarms. Remind yourself to be grateful. Like look around, set an alarm, and find something to be grateful for.
it's like the
Maybe
little wins in a day instead of taking things as losses.
little
Like
wins
some
in the
people,
day.
yeah, some people look at the day and it's like something happens and it wrecks the whole day. But
Yeah, the whole day.
yeah, because they can't take the fact that it's like, well, they got up and it was sunny outside, but then this one thing happened, triggered, and it's like, why is it terrible? Right? And it's like, well, what about the sunny day? Like, what about
What
your dog, or what about like what something your wife said, or this thing that was good, but this other thing is outweighing everything.
it's 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 crazy that I mean, everything is such a miracle. Everything's such a blessing. There's so much we could all be grateful for. If we're breathing air in our lungs, there's things we can find to be grateful for. And when you want to manifest something big, let's just say you want to manifest a new house, you know, a good way to do that is being really appreciative of what you've got now.
Hmm.
You know, thank you for this roof over my head. And taking good care of it, you know. So like make sure that you're grateful for what you have, even if you want something different. Just be grateful for where you are right now, all the things you have
It's kind of
right
like
now.
respect for what you have, in your life, instead of kind of say, well, this is terrible. This is
Yep.
the worst, and I could do much better. And so you're bringing like this negative vibe on it.
Well, you
'Cause
put scarcity on it,
yeah,
right? You make it lack instead of abundance. So when you're creating lack, that's what you're going to get more of. It doesn't matter what you say, it matters what you feel.
yeah,
So,
you feel
so
like a
yeah,
scarcity thing instead of an abundance mindset, and
right.
you end up living in that bad loop. Because
So
I
what
always
yeah, whatever you can do to find to be grateful for, whatever it is, it could be from small things to big things. eh,
mhm.
Be take advantage of it. Be grateful for it. Feel it in your body. You know. Uh,
But like lessons learned, like it was, in life, you find like things that you do that maybe you were scared of doing. Like a lot of times, fear and safety I found are a lot of drivers of just every human nature. And
mhm.
so the thing that you're fearful of is the thing that's unknown. Like in
Yeah.
the stock market today, people are like, "Well, we need stability. We need to know what's going to happen." In the financial markets, it's all based on predictability.
Yeah.
And they can't get their head around like unpredictability. So, well, I can't price this. I can't do my plans. Can't do my business plan. I can't do anything unless something's stable. Well, the world is not necessarily stable.
No, and things. I think one of the biggest uh, falsities that people tell their kids is that life is fair. You know, life isn't meant to be fair. That's not a thing. You know,
Yeah.
life is meant to be lived. We're meant to learn. This is our this is our university or even our kindergarten. This is where we learn. This is where we practice. Life is just a practice, and we just do our best with it. So it's not about having things be stable or fair, or it's about witnessing and being grateful for the things that we have, and for the miracles that happen every millisecond for us to just be in these bodies. It's
Yeah,
life
it's
is just
interesting.
so crazy. Yeah.
So we live in a world where there's like exponential growth in like tech. It's
Yeah.
changing the baseline. And then we got financial people who come maybe more conservative. I want predictability.
Yeah.
But we're living in an age with AI, which actually is so advanced, right? Things are changing exponentially. It could actually, they got trucks that could drive semis by
Yeah.
themselves. That's a disruptive thing, right? It's an
Yeah.
innovative thing. So if you want predictability, it's like, well, I'm going to have to pay my truck drivers for the next 5 years. But guess what? In the next 5 years, you might not have these truck drivers doing that job. You might
Right.
have this AI thing doing the job. So you're trying to predict stuff in the middle of like a revolution. Like this is like the industrial revolution. It's like the AI revolution.
Yeah.
There's so many things that are going to change because of that. And then on top of that, you have environmental revolution because of climate change. And then you got, human beings that make political decisions with wars and stuff. You have no idea. India and Pakistan, they could do something.
Mm-hmm.
You can't predict what they'll do. You have some ideas. There's different things that can happen. Like you can't have a total crystal ball. And so like you have to make decisions and be risk averse or risk tolerant.
Well, also in this time, especially, I believe finding peace within, knowing who you are, and we only can control what we can control, and the only thing we can control is our own point of view, our own response to things. That's it.
Mhm.
So, getting all worked up over things that we don't have control over. Not that we should put our head in the sand, and not that we shouldn't help who we can, but the only thing we control is ourselves. So now's the time to get yourself aligned, make sure you are in a good place. And so when all these things are happening outside, you can come back to yourself.
Yeah, I think it's just are you willing to I know it's like people want stability, but what I'm kind of getting at is when you're in the middle of like a revolutionary kind of age, kind of
Hmm.
like when horse and buggy went to cars.
Yeah.
There's certain people like, well, if you were the person to take care of the horses, you had to actually, you're not gonna that's gonna go away.
Yeah. You have to
So you
evolve.
could be very fearful of like, what am I gonna do? Well, you
Hmm.
could go and try to learn how to be a mechanic.
Right.
But you have to be in the mindset that you could be a mechanic. If you're in the mindset, well, I only take care of horses, I want nothing to do with the engine.
Yeah. Limited mindset.
The
Yeah.
limited mindset is gonna
Yeah.
be a detriment to that because of that revolutionary type of situation happening, you know. So sometimes like the external thing, you just have to have the right mindset for the external thing that's going on.
Right. But that all comes back to how you feel about yourself and where you think you could take yourself. If you limited mindset is no different than scarcity. It's it creates all the same thing.
Yeah, I think sometimes people just don't realize that they're in that loop.
You're right. The first thing is to recognize you're in the loop. You got to be able to break the pattern.
Because people are in a pattern, they go, I'm not in a pattern.
Yeah.
So it's like that right there is that like the first like uh step in understanding how to get to manifestation is understanding that looking glass self, understanding who you are, understanding like your fears and your
Y-
hesitation and things like that. They like I guess getting a hold of it.
Well, you do have to start where you are. So you do have to figure out, A, do you want to change? And B, why? Why do you want to change? What's your why? And maybe it's because they don't like how they feel or whatever. And that's your starting place. whatever your why is. And then honestly, it's you don't try to do everything at once. You take things in bite-sized chunks.
But yeah, I think the all or nothing is probably a big problem.
Oh, big problem. Yeah, you
Like
gotta
it
just start where you are and do it in small steps. And small steps will take you a long way.
yeah, I think it gets to the patience. Like, do you have the patience for the small step or the grace that you're not going to go from 0 to 100, right?
Well, that's
Emotional.
humility.
Yeah, and that is
Mm.
hard to get if you don't have it.
Mhm.
So then it's like, well, how do you start to build up something that you're lacking that's actually in your way? Like you're standing in your own way because of that limiting belief or the inability to actually have the rigor or do the practice or have this something that's sustainable rather than maybe kind of what's the next diet? What's the next 10-step thing? Is like,
Well, I'll honestly, a lot of times people don't change until they're so tired of their own story, until they can't stand telling the same thing again.
mm,
And that's when people catch themselves. It could be with any part of your life. You hear yourself telling the same story over and over again. At some point, you're tired of it. And that's usually when
you got
change can start to happen.
the crucible moment that
Yeah.
happens that makes you decide, like, hey, I'm done with this toxic thing. Like,
Oh,
I'm
I
done.
just don't like this story anymore. This is a really boring story. I don't like it.
Mhm.
You know, that
Yeah.
happens. That happens. You'll hear some if you hear yourself telling somebody the same thing over and over, you're probably in some kind of loop. You're probably
Like
in
your
some kind of
uncle. Like your
pattern.
uncle
Yeah.
comes on Thanksgiving and says the same story all the time.
Yes.
But guess what? You're just like your uncle.
Yeah. I mean, you're in this pattern. So the stories we tell ourselves are powerful. And when you can catch them when they're negative, that's amazing. Then you can rewrite your story. You can change your narrative. You can change your life.
Well, I think that's a good place close tonight. And I want to let people know we do have your link below, helloJulieHeaton.com. And if people click on that, what do they find there?
That's my website, and they can find my books, and I have mentoring packages and things like that. A lot of free info. I do a lot of articles and one sheets and stuff like that.
I want to let people know that on the platforms that we're on, like Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, within the podcast description, that URL is clickable. It'll be fully clickable once we're off the air on those platforms. And we will be on multiple platforms by tomorrow, like Apple Podcast, iHeartRadio, Amazon Podcast, Spotify. And I want to thank you for being a guest on the Fam Lecter Ghost podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. It was wonderful. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.